So it's time to start pulling in my honey crop. I'm using escape boards, and I'm going to walk through some of the process and thoughts that I've got. I've got Parker videoing for me today. I was far enough away from the camera that I need to voice over this. I just didn't pick up well. So I'm using a double medium brood nest area this year. And of course, that's a 1/3 bigger brood area than a single deep would be. And I'm really liking this system. I'm going to strip off everything above the second medium, and I'm going to add back a third medium with foundation and 2 feeders in it. So first thing I do is I pull the lid off. I squish any hive beetles I find. I'm going to strip the supers off and get down to the queen excluder and then queen check the bottom. I look down into the brood area to see if I can see sealed brood. If I see sealed brood, that means they're queen right. I will pull a bait frame up to get them into this third box full of foundation. Sometimes they won't draw comb if you just put a box of foundation on top, but putting a frame of brood up there will definitely get them working in the top. As I pull that frame out, I'm looking for obvious signs of varroa-sensitive hygienic traits, such as uncap recap behavior or removing brood. That gives me an indication of mite loads, but it also helps me to find some of those VSH hives that might go into my breeding program later. So bees in the honey supers really like to cycle down into the brood nest once a day or every couple of days. And that's why an escape board works. It is basically a one-way valve within the hive. Bees in the honey supers can go down, but then there's a baffle and they cannot find their way back up. So putting sugar syrup in this third box, bees from the honey supers will go down. They'll get that sugar syrup, but the sugar syrup cannot make its way back up into my honey supers. So my honey is pure, and the bees have got sugar syrup to work and start drawing comb while I'm waiting on these supers to clear to come and harvest them. When I come back, there will be very, very few bees in these honey supers. It generally takes about a day per super. So I gave this yard a dose of oxalic acid 2 days ago, and I'm here today I should have done this yesterday, but I was busy. I'm here to bag a dying hive that's getting overrun by hive beetles. This one, it's nasty. So I'm gonna bag that and go freeze it. Try to burn anything I see on the ground. But when I'm getting ready to pull honey supers and I start doing oxalic acid, I'm looking for breeders for next year. So this hive, the queen is in the bottom, so they've got 1, 2, 3, 4 honey supers. I'll give them a green pin for each one of those. I take off the ones for previous years, so I know I'm only dealing with this year's, like that is from a previous year. And then I check mite levels. So oxalic acid 2 days ago, there's a mite. There's one. Looks like just the shells. There's one for sure. So they've got a few, but I would say for a hive this size, that is few enough. We'll give them a green pin. Now, when I pull honey supers, I will check brood in all these hives. And if I see evidence of uncapping, chewing out brood, uncap recap behavior, that sort of thing, I'll put a blue pin in. I used to use orange, but I use red pins for bad things. And after they're sun faded, red and orange look the same. So blue looks very different. So blue means I've got some observed VSH traits. And then if we go farther than that and I start doing a herbo assays or things like that, then the bottom board will get a number tag, and I'll keep better records on this specific queen. So herbo assay, UBO test, that sort of thing. I'm using this to narrow down the ones that I want to test further. So big production colonies that are making honey, that are gentle. If I've got any that are not gentle, they get a red pin right here. And then if they are orderly, they don't cross comb, that just a hive I like, they get a green pin here. If they make a lot of cross comb or do wacky stuff I hate, I'll give them a red pin here. Basically any red pins keeps me from breeding from that colony. It's like 8:30 in the morning and I'm dripping with sweat. I haven't been doing anything but chores so far. You know, I started the day at 7 or so. Haven't done anything but chores. Just rolling with sweat. Boy, it's hot. So I don't have any high mite counts in this yard, which is a little bit reassuring, but you know, I temper that with experience. As I pull these supers off of this hive, I'll add another one that will compress the bees down. Now the queen's in the bottom, so I should be getting a good treatment on the bees at the brood area, but all the other bees I'm not getting a good treatment on. The hive's just too big. I've been watching as I apply the oxalic acid on these offset supers, and very little of it actually comes out of that offset super because it's always the fourth box it's offset. Most of the OAV stays in the bottom, so it's in the brood chamber. So I should be getting a pretty good treatment on the young bees, the nurse bees, and all that. But the hives have got a lot of sealed brood right now, and they've still got some drone brood in them. And research has shown that mites prefer not only drone brood, but they prefer to be on drones. So as we get farther in the season and the number of bees starts to decline and they stop producing drone brood, I'll actually start getting a better percentage kill, and I can have a yard like this. It looks good in July, and come back in October and I'll think I've got a big mite problem. When in reality, they just don't have as much brood and I'm getting a better kill. So this is reassuring, but it's something that I will continue to monitor and manage. That's all you can do. Mites have to be managed in one way or another. Even if you are a quote-unquote treatment-free beekeeper, you're managing mites through winter loss, dead loss, or making splits, or breeding for resistance, or something. You are managing for it. So I showed a couple of hives in this yard last week, I think, that were completely drawn out in the second and had 30 or 35 pounds in there, and they just didn't want to draw any more frames in the top. So I took frames out of the second, raised them up to the top, and then dropped foundations into the middle of the brood nest, and they are working those now. They're pulling them out, so that's good. This one is almost complete. I've dropped them down to 1 feeder. This one I'll give 2 more gallons and hope that gets those frames finished. And then they'll just be on maintenance after that. It'll be time to get mite treatments done on them and just make sure they're heavy for winter. These are coming along pretty good. There's an end in sight to the feeding on these, and that's a good thing. Makes me very happy because my workload is going to increase a lot with the honey harvest. I need to pivot to working on other things. Going around doing mite assessments on yards that have had OAV. And I'm not seeing anything concerning yet. It's not as bad as it was last year. These hives have had no treatment since January or February. And then it was just OAV. So feeling pretty good about where most of my yards are gonna be at right now, but I've still got to get the first treatment done on all of them and do some monitoring. I finally found a hive bad enough to get a red pen. That is not terrible. I've seen a whole lot worse, and I've seen hives a whole lot worse make it through winter okay. But this is bad enough that I do not want to breed from them. So they'll get a red pen right there. And that'll kick them out of my breeding program forever. You might wonder why I'm holding my propane torch. This is off topic, but that's because when I pull out these closures, a lot of times there are hive beetles in a little cluster on them. And if you flash them with a torch real quick, it kills them. So that's what I'm doing. Anyway, here's the one that was my first red pen on mite count for the year. And you can see what I'm doing with my breeding program. Hive right next to it, actually bigger than that one. So I put an extra super on this just to see if they would fill it up on sumac. I'm not giving them credit for that because it's not full, but they've got 4 honest supers that were put on in the flow. So they've got 4 pens there, and then a good mite check. Got very few mites. This hive was started last year. That's what I'm looking for. The honey supers, having 4 supers on it, almost certainly means that this hive did not swarm. Whereas you've got some up here that I know I had some swarming up here, shorter hives. And yeah, I've got good mite check and even some VSH traits here, but they only got two honest honey supers. So that can be a tell for swarming. Some of these hives up here have got more supers. They probably didn't swarm. They got 4 supers on them. They almost certainly didn't. So these are all things I'm looking for when I'm looking for my breeders for next year. And on some of these, I'll come back in and do a Harbo assay or UBO test and try to figure out, do they have VSH traits or not? That's not everything I'm looking for, but it is something I'm looking for. Trying to dial this in more this year on my queen breeding. Been in this yard 20 minutes. There was a doe bedded right here about 12 steps away. She waited till I was all the way down here to take off. She's in the weeds down there now. I bet she's got a fawn somewhere around here. How hot is it today? This hive tool has been sitting on top of a hive in this yard, and I'm here. It's like 1 o'clock, 1:15, something like that, and just started turning over my closures, pulling the closures out on these screen bottom boards and killing beetles and making sure they're good and clean, because I'm going to do an oxalic acid treatment and then check mite drops afterwards. So they need the closures need to be clean. And I'm going around, and some of them I scrape with a hive tool. So I was taking this hive tool around with me, grabbed it off of a hive. I was wearing gloves, dropped it in my back pocket to carry it with me. It melted through the liner of my back pocket and fell down my pants leg. So now I've got a big hole in my back pocket because this hive tool was hot enough to melt it. That's how hot it is. We've had the rain this year. Heavy work. I generally get a small brush cutter, not a weed eater. I think this one I'm not for sure. I think it's got a solid shaft in it. There's a bee stuck in there. I have to leave a metal blade on it all the time. Stuff I do is rough usually. Need to be able to deal with tall weeds, briars, everything up to 2-inch saplings, and that blade will do it. So this is quickly becoming my new favorite sport. We'll see if we've got a lot of hive beetles in this one. Usually the ones on the ends of a row have a ton of beetles. Like that one up there on the end had a ton, hundreds on the bottom closure. If they've got bees in here, they usually won't have a whole lot. It doesn't take much. I bet this one up here is reloaded. They had hundreds. I don't know if this is a heritable trait or not. Bees that can deal with hive beetles well or poorly. I don't know. I killed all those off just a few minutes ago. Obviously, you don't want to set your hive stands on fire. That would not be good. All right, we're ready to do some OAV. Then some weed eating, and then we'll do pest and parasite. So I bought that pallet of sugar at Costco, and it took like 70% of their stock for them to give me a whole pallet, and the salesperson had to get approvals from 2 or 3 different people and call the warehouse to see when they could get more, and it took an hour and a half. And then I made a tank of syrup and used like a fifth of the pallet to do it, and I got to thinking, oh boy, if there's going to be a shortage, I'm going to be in a bind. So I went ahead and got another pallet. That one only took half of their stock, so there was no trouble at all. But I've got a little bit of a supply now. Boy, I'm going through it quick. That's about about 115, 120 gallons there. I'll probably feed that today. That hen's got her poults with her. I love it. Hope we had a good hatch this year.